You're listening to Out Loud and Live with JC Alvarez.
Pop culture columnist and author PADRAIC MARONEY is a leading authority on the horror film genre. His book, It All Began with a Scream, gives fans unparalleled access behind the scenes of the franchise's first 25 years. And we both look forward to the current installment in theaters now, Scream 7.
Hello?
Do you like scary movies? Surprise, Sydney.
It's gonna be fun.
I'm joined by somebody who is not only a great pop culture enthusiast, but the author of one of the best books on the Scream franchise, PADRAIC MARONEY. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, JC.
What an amazing weekend for Scream 7. Huge numbers, 97.2 million global. You know, given that you're really an authority on this franchise, which is one of the most beloved horror film franchises, give me your take on the latest installment. What did you think of Scream 7?
Well, one, like you mentioned this weekend, I mean, I don't want to speak for, filmmakers or anything, but like I always try to lean on the side of caution.
Yes.
So to think that it was going to make 65 million, I think was out of the realm. I saw like some people were saying globally it would make that, but I was like, let's be cautious because then we're setting ourselves up if it doesn't. But I think best case scenario, 97 worldwide, 65 globally is such an achievement and I think it's really shows the fans' appreciation for the franchise. Especially the reviews weren't great for this one. So it's showing also that this franchise, for 30 years, it's review proof that people love the Scream movies. And I'll be honest, I saw the movie twice once before it came out, and again with an audience, because one of the things I love about the Scream movies also is it's a communal experience.
It is, yes, absolutely.
And seeing it in like the opening of Scream 2, like seeing it with an audience in theaters is so much better than seeing it at home. Like, there's going to be, even though my theater audience was relatively quiet, like they cheered when Gail came on the screen in her ever Gail way this time. So there's a lot that I like about this movie. There's some issues that I also have with it.
Sure, it's not perfect.
No. And I've said this about some of the other movies. The way that I describe it, and I hope I don't get in trouble for saying it, is I use a line from Clueless.
Okay.
That Scream 7 is a Monet. That from far away, it's amazing if you just sit. If you just look at it, watch it, turn your head off, aren't thinking, it's a lot of fun.
Yes.
When you get up close personal and are in its bits and analyzing it, that's when it kind of becomes a mess in a lot of ways.
Right. Well, the uniqueness about this one is that, Neve Campbell, who has been the final girl and, the fan favorite since the franchise came onto the scene 30 years ago, with his first installment, when Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven brought it to life, she sat out the last one, which was diverting. It was moving the mythology in a different direction. But, due to circumstances beyond a lot of the creative control, Neb was brought back into the franchise with Kevin Williamson also helming for the first time. And I was very much impressed, not only by how we were able to really accept her back in after kind of like going in a different direction. It was so great to see her back in there, but I also really was so happy to see how Kevin not only worked the story, but also his ability to really kind of like pay homage to Wes Craven. Did you see a lot of homages to Wes Craven in this film?
I think there was some good homages to a lot of his influence. I think you also see multiple homages to Halloween, which Kevin has said is his favorite might be his favorite movie, period, but definitely his favorite horror
Right.
movie. So I think there's definitely a lot of shades of Wes
Yeah.
Craven and John Carpenter's Halloween that you
Right.
see throughout the entire movie.
And like you mentioned, it's just great seeing Courtney Cox back. One of the things that I really appreciate about seeing Gail back is that there was a reality to the toll that everything had taken on her was finally worked into the story, which I think was something that was really, really important for that character, was unique to that character.
Well, one thing I just want to touch on with Gail, I think that was one of the weird things with Scream 6 was seeing
Mhm.
that Gail was already living with someone,
Yeah.
seemingly living with Brooks so soon after losing Dewey, even though they weren't together.
Yeah.
So seeing her this time, really having the anxiety issues and everything, and really still mourning Dewey, I think rang much more true
Right.
than her having, someone
Right.
that she was serious about.
Right.
Um, and that's not to
Right.
say maybe they were together before and we didn't know, but I felt that was very true. Um,
Yeah, and there's a lot of nods in this one to how tough New York was, how tough
yeah,
Six was.
and I was kind of torn about how much they harped on that because
Mm,
some of the mentions felt like little digs at
right.
the movie and maybe at some of the filmmaker, or people that weren't around for this one. So I'm a little torn on
Sure.
that. And I mean, that's the whole, I mean, that goes into the whole plot of this one, though, is her not being in New York. Um, but they had to address it somehow, especially with Gail getting attacked so brutally.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so I'm glad that they did address it. It did seem a little weird that neither Mindy or Chad mentioned Tara. I mean,
I
wasn't
know.
wasn't Chad basically dating Tara at the end?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And it was
um,
great. I mean, it's like that was like, we're so excited about the fact that they got together during that whole trauma of Six. As a native New Yorker, I really have a soft spot for Six. Like I can watch it again and again and again, and it just like gets me. It's like
it's fun.
it's
It's a
fun.
fun. Yeah, I mean, and I know a lot of people have issues with the bodega scene and whatnot, but again, it's one of those things. And so people always ask me after I wrote the book, like
Mm,
how I rank them. And I really should be more political. Like when I was doing the Final Destination book, people would
mm,
just flat out be like, I'm not doing that. I should start. But I would always tell them I have two different rankings, like in terms of like quality and
right.
then like rewatchability. Like the ones
Right.
that I rewatch are going to be different than the ones that I think are the best made.
Right.
Um,
I agree.
and
I totally agree. You're absolutely right.
yeah, like Scream 6 is one that I can rewatch endlessly. This is probably gonna be one that I can rewatch a lot. Just because it moves very fast.
Hmm.
I find that Scream 2, I don't have that rewatchability because it's slow in the beginning
Yeah.
until Cece dies.
Yeah.
So it's either I skip like the first half of the movie or and at that
That's-
point, like what's but again, I've seen that so many times that, but yeah.
Have you ever, and I want to go back to, of course, one of the major plot points of Scream 7, because I want to hear your take on it, but you just raised a really great. Have you ever watched them all in sequence, like marathon them?
Um, so I'm really bad at binging things.
Okay.
Like even TV shows, I watch like one, maybe two episodes at a time.
Mhm.
So if I do a marathon, like I'll do like one a night for like a week, or over the course of like two weeks. I've done it, but it'll be over like a week or two.
Right.
I very rarely would like go one right into the other to the next for in anything. Like even when I'm working on the books, like I can't. I need like a break, especially because some of the stuff is dark and heavy that like sometimes you
Yeah.
need to put something light on, like happy
Right.
endings
Right.
or Friends.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, this one I felt, and they've exceedingly ever since Scream. 2022, started getting a lot more tactile, a lot more physical with the murders. And well, ever since Scream 4, they started getting a little more brutal. I found this one to be a little more brutal, but it also made sense to me because it was also, again, the whole time I was feeling, I'm like, this is a grown up story. It really was like Scream 30 years later. So it was great seeing the originals back, but it was also kind of cool seeing the new characters that had been introduced before, and then of course this whole new mythology with in the introduction of Sydney's children, especially her daughter. What did you think of that storyline and the possibility of it picking up from there? Especially the fact that there's a coldness between Sydney and her teenage daughter, Tatum, who's played by Isabel May,
Who's
who I thought
great.
they were so good together. That was a great dynamic to see Sydney sort of like now be mama bear to this teenager. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I think it's funny because when we first met Sydney,
Mhm.
I don't want to say she was weak at the beginning of Scream 1, but she was a little bit softer.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
she hadn't quite become the survivor yet that
right,
she is today.
right.
She didn't have the battle wounds. And we've seen over the last few movies that she really has. And I think, especially with the fifth movie, part of what has led that is her family
Yeah.
and wanting to have a normal life for her family. I think that's a great dovetail, is her finding her inner mama bear and also coming into her own power.
I'm gonna replenish my fuel as well.
See, so also they had so many tie-ins with the movie theaters for merch, and I'm
I
not sure if
did.
I'm moving in May, so I made a rule back in December that I can't bring anything new into my apartment.
Okay.
So I have none of this stuff
Oh
because,
no.
and like
I'm
everyone's like,
s-
"Oh, do you want me to pick it up for you?" Exactly.
Do you
And
want me to
that
pick
one
it? Do you want me
reminds
to?
me.
I'm happy to share this with you if you'd like.
Well, every month we'll send it back and forth. But also, that reminds me of Roman's office in Scream 3, the giant ghost face.
Yeah.
Like, ever since I saw that, I'm like, that they took that from Scream 3.
That was something that had been teased about a lot in Scream 7, that there were going to be these sort of like notes to the entire
Mhm.
franchise.
Unspoiler alert, in this section we tried skirting around Scream 7's reveal of its use of AI, which is now pretty common knowledge.
Scream always had this thing about technologies and affecting modern technologies and making that sort of like a device. So the fact that they sort of like use that is a trick that's being used to sort of like manipulate the whole sinister side of the story. I thought that was interesting how that factored in to the whole thing of bringing the connections together.
I get what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
Um, and I like when you have to be like mining for gold with it. I feel like you're like sifting through everything that spoiler says,
Right.
um, to get to the point of what it is.
Sure.
And I think that once you get down to it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And the,
Yeah.
but I think the way it's handled is a little clumsy.
Yes.
Um, and
Yes.
that, I think that's a problem because if you're online, a lot of people keep mentioning that the reveal might be weak or they think it's the worst. And I think the way the motive and reveal were handled was a little clumsy, but it's in line with what the franchise has been doing with, the toxic fandom. I think also more than any other film in the franchise, this is it'll be interesting to see in a few years how it'll be portrayed because this more than anything else holds a mirror up to the fandom.
Yep. Yep.
Because
Agreed.
the whole is Stu actually alive or is it AI?
Right.
That's going to what I call the Stu truthers for the
Right.
last
Right.
10, 15 years that have sworn that he's alive. And then the reveal is also, the parasocial relationships and the I'm just gonna go ahead and say it, the entitlement that some fans feel, not just
Right.
about Scream, but just fandoms in general,
Yeah. Yeah.
that they're owed things from
Absolutely.
the creators. It'll be interesting to see if people will embrace that over time or if it's too harsh of a reflection on them.
Yeah, that's such a wonderful, it's such a smart, you just laid it out so beautifully and so succinctly and also so brilliantly. Mindy has Jasmine Savoy Brown's returning character who has often failed to figure out who the murderer is in the last two installments of the film. She nails it when she says, this time around, it's a fan. It's about the ultimate fan. It's about somebody who's after Sydney because they're the ultimate fan. And I remember that when that line hits, I'm like, oh, that's so interesting because I hadn't digested it until it's said. And you just wrapped it up so beautifully. And it's sort of like, especially for franchise films, and I always feel like I'm like, no one is getting it. It's sort of like, you have to, you're not enjoying this experience because you're attaching something that you feel you're owed.
And that was kind of what I was saying about like the expectations with how it would do at the box office. Like
Right.
trying to figure that out and put a flag down of it's going to make this much. If it doesn't make it, you're setting yourself up for
Mhm.
disappointment. Like go in without expectations, I think, because at the end of the day, all that you are owed, and this might even be a reach, but you are owed a movie.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
you aren't owed that Stu Macher is still alive after living in a cave, like, Bin Laden for 30 years. Like that's not like they don't owe you to do certain things. So y you're you are owed an hour and a half, 2 hours of escapement and entertainment.
Yeah, and
It's
and
done.
I think the pacing of this was phenomenal. From the opener, which kind of like, is an homage to the entire franchise, but it's also, kind of like connecting us to, how fans react to things. It's set the tone and set the pace up for the entirety of the movie. I was surprised at how quickly things start progressing in this film, especially the fact that the murders are almost start happening right away. It's like boom, 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 boom.
And the funny thing is, when the first time I saw it, and this is why it leads me to believe that this movie might be like a Scream 4 that ages better. The first
Mm,
time I saw it, it felt like there was a long time between the opening and the first kill. And
okay.
then when I saw it a second time, I was like, oh, we're already at this scene? Like, oh, that was really fast. So
It's like, yeah,
yeah, so I think repeated watchings, things change and everything. So that's why I think like we might see people soften or get it maybe a little bit more, unless they just reject the reveal as things go on, and then that's another story for
right,
another
right.
movie.
And I completely agree with that. It really, and just as a fan of the franchise, I was very happy with it, and I had such a good time. It was just so great to visit the characters again. But whenever I feel nostalgic, not only do I watch it again, but I pick up. It all began with a Scream because to me, this is one of the best books on the making of a franchise and how it affected pop culture. I mean, you've covered so much in the book. And you put it all in there. You didn't really leave anything on the floor because you got such insight from the cast and the crew of all the way from the inception of the film. First of all, of course, I love it. I'm a huge fan. Congratulations. What motivated you, besides being such a fan of films, to sit down and write It All Began with the Scream?
It was two things. One, I knew that the 25th anniversary was coming up. And I was shocked that there wasn't a book already about it
Mm,
on the market, because the other big franchises like Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween have multiple books,
Right.
multiple documentaries, and this didn't have anything. Um, and it seemed that like for such a big milestone that there had to be something. And then that was in October of 2019 that I realized that was coming up. And then the world shut down
Mhm.
like 6 months later, and everyone needed a pandemic project. So I did, I picked up that and drumming, and I like to say that my neighbors liked one more than the other. Um, I'll let you guess which. Yeah. You
So
can't
that,
have mutes
so
on the
that's
drums though. So I
I
did try
can't have
to,
meats on the drum.
but yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this covers so much of it, and has such great insight. Speaking of like when the anniversary happened and they were getting ready to start moving. I love when you transition from the original trilogy into discussing how they were starting to set up that they wanted to go into Scream 4 and just almost the machinations of that. Were you surprised by when they were getting Scream 4 ready, just how everything was kind of like falling into place and sort of the secrecy around it? And because that's one of my favorite chapters in the book. And also it made me appreciate Scream 4 a lot more.
And I think that's I found out after that I wrote a book about the Final Destination franchise, and you know coincidentally the fourth movie there is looked at a certain way. But I've always said with both books, I'm never going to change how someone feels about a movie.
Mm,
Some people really don't like Scream 3, some don't like Scream 4 because of tonal things. Some people, it's their favorite movies.
mhm.
Um, I'm not going to change how people feel one way or the other about these movies, but my hope is that you'll have a better understanding of why they turned out the way they did. So like with three, talking about the lawsuits and Columbine and things like that. With Scream 4, talking about the multiple scripts, how
Right.
Kevin ended up leaving during production because of some of the issues and how they were filming and getting script pages that day. Um, I think it just shows how, um, you know, it really gives you an insight to how some movies are made. And I think, to your point,
Yes,
it is, you have to appreciate that Scream 4 came out the way it did. It could have been a
exactly.
complete train wreck
Right.
with some of the things that they were dealing with. And to come out with a movie, again, Scream 4 is one of my favorite
Hmm.
sequels. I find
Oh
it
yeah.
super fun to watch.
And it's very much it captures the spirit of the first one, but
Mhm.
also it sets it up in 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 its time. Like it uses a lot of that technology that's right there.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I think is also, and you touched on this earlier, the Scream movies are always of its time because of how technologically advanced the movies are. Um, to this day, I still don't know that spoofing a cell phone is as prevalent as the Scream movies led us to be. It's like quicksand when we were kids. We thought we were going to grow up and quicksand was going to be everywhere. I, I think Scream kind of made us think that spoofing cell phones was something everyone was going to do.
Yeah.
I have yet to, as far as I know, had a cell phone spoofed, but it's fun to see though, and with Scream 4, it was so ahead of its time with a lot of the technologies and where they were going that, but
And
it
the statements on reality shows and becoming
uh,
famous and what that hunger, like what would you do to become famous, I thought was such an interesting turn, again playing off of the cleverness that
mhm,
Kevin introduced from the very beginning, because if anything, Scream was saying, I'm a slasher movie, but I'm clever.
mhm.
I'm going to take this genre and I'm going to spin it in a direction that's unpredictable to you. The original trilogy, I wanted to ask you, especially given your research, did they always intend for Scream 3 to end in that direction? Because there was so much turmoil around that particular installment as well. And I've always thought that Kevin may have wanted to go in a different direction by the time we got to the third one, which seems as if the story kind of like spun itself out of control a bit.
Yeah, there was. an idea, and that's where the whole Stu Truthers come from, is that there was going to be that he was the mastermind behind three.
Right.
Um, and it was going to take place back in Woodsboro, and whatnot. Which, if anyone has not seen the show that Kevin Williamson did, The Following,
Mhm.
it's about a cult. And I think he reused some of the ideas originally from Scream 3
Interesting.
in it. And the pilot to that show is one of the best hours of TV to date.
Oh, great. Wow.
So anyone who hasn't watched that, I haven't watched it in a couple years now, but I've watched it multiple times, and it is a amazing hour to just watch.
That's great. Great note. Yeah. So they did have Scream 3 did have a different sort of direction it wanted to take until it started spinning into sort of like a satire of sort of like the movie that inspired it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely it was gonna go down a different route. Um, I believe there was still going to be the film taking place, if I remember correctly. But it wasn't gonna be set in Hollywood, and it was gonna be more high schoolers versus, 20, 30-year olds.
One of the things that I also appreciate that readers reading this are going to get they do you do steep a lot of it in not only the behind the scenes of it all, but also the things that inspired it, the takes that Kevin and both Wes Craven were inspired from, because that's one of the things about Scream is that it really is inspired by the genre that it's sitting in. It's taking it and it's pushing it in and involving it. And that's one of the things that I think is also fantastic that you do, because you make all these references to the films that inspired Scream and its history. And when you go back and you watch those films, the Scream franchises, do you ever look at it and go and see something very different, especially after researching so much, see something very different in one of those favorite scenes from any of the installments?
When I'm watching newer horror movies, especially slashers, and seeing how Scream inspired them, um,
Right, right.
especially now, not necessarily the ones from the 90s, because those were more ripoffs, um,
Mm,
or we can say homages, but
that's being
you know,
kind.
yeah, I mean, I think some of them get unfairly lumped in with the
Sure.
ripoffs, but um, now that it's been so long, seeing how Scream is still influencing the genre
Right.
and everything.
A lot of people didn't know what to take when Scream didn't know what to make of Scream 2022. I thought it was great. I was very pleased. I was really happy with what Radio Silence had sort of like done and what was happening at the genre at that time. It made so much sense to me, but also the idea of the requel. How did you feel about revisiting, when they revisited Scream in 2022?
So, and I've talked to Guy Busick about this, so I feel like I can say it. And I've in conversations in general, I'll say I don't love fan service for the sake of fan service.
Hmm.
And I feel like Scream 5, Scream 2022 had a lot of fan service
Hmm.
to it. Um, so I didn't like that element of it. But I think they did a great job with, introducing an entire new generation of victims and a cast. And, they followed the formula, but changed it up. It was the
Right.
first time we had someone who survived an opening, and and the way that they tied certain things in, I think it was a great way to relaunch the franchise.
We really became invested in those characters, who lived tangentially to our existing characters who we now got to revisit in Scream 7. Um, I think one of the things that I would and I'm sure that you're already doing it. Have you amended, or are you looking at adding to It All Began with a Scream as the franchise continues?
Yeah, so having read the book, you know how dramatic the Scream movies are behind the scenes.
Mhm.
Anyone who's followed the making of Seven knows how dramatic the Scream movies are.
Right.
So there is plans to do an update to it. I'm kind of trying to find it's like jumping into Double Dutch, trying to find that time so
Yes.
that we're far so that it's far enough away that we can be objective,
Right.
because I was at an event this week and I was telling someone like just look since everything happened with Melissa Barrera, um with Scream 7 when she sent out the tweet,
Mhm.
and how that was viewed now versus back then, like
Right.
how opinions have changed about, um not necessarily the tweet but like the situation around it and everything, so I think we need to be far enough away from some things to look at them objectively.
Mhm.
I mean, certain things like sending a filmmaker death threats, you can
Mhm.
immediately say is wrong. You don't have to
Correct.
have space, and I think everyone should be able to agree in a
Right.
fandom.
Absolutely.
Death threats are a no-no, even
Yeah,
for a
it's a
horror movie.
no-no, even for a horror movie,
Yeah.
even for a horror
Um,
film.
but yeah, I think it's just being able to have that, and not just for me to be able to objectively write about it, but also for people, because the producers and the filmmakers and everyone that lived through it, whether it was a good experience or a bad experience, for them to be able to step back from that high or that low and
Yes.
be able to talk about the experience just objectively. So I'm noodling around when that might be, and if I think there's going to be a break coming up, um before the next at certain one, maybe after the next movie or something. Yeah.
I know that when you revisit it, you'll have so much more to get into.
Yeah, and there's been a couple people have specifically asked also about a section on the TV show.
Hmm.
um I think that would be something similar to in that book how I cover Cursed for
Right.
a chapter. I don't think I would do a full section on the TV show, but at least like a chapter or two maybe,
Sure.
talking about it, because it is, even though it's not canon canon to the film
Hmm.
series, it is the legacy of the
Right.
franchise.
When Drew Barrymore was cast, I mean, everyone just loved how Drew was cast and how it pivots to the shock of her being the first kill. But I've still today, I've told people that she was originally cast as Sidney Prescott, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
And then as you illustrate in the book, she's reading it and she's going through it and she's saying, and she's the one that tells Wes Craven, wouldn't it be kind of cool if I'm the one that gets off in the beginning?
Yeah, I think that's one of the interesting things is, because Drew is only in the movie for 10 minutes in the beginning, it it's kind of easy to downplay her role in it.
Right.
And I don't necessarily want to overplay, but it was her idea to switch from being Sydney to Casey, and they filmed that in the beginning, and then she was never on set really with the rest of the cast, but
Right.
she made a list of like places they should visit and hang out while they were there after she finished. I like to joke around that she was almost like the cruise director, giving them the list of things to check out and what places were cool.
Right.
So I feel like, she had her hands kind of all over the movie. Um, not to, again, I don't want to overplay her role, but I think
Her producer instincts kind of kicked in.
yeah, I think, it was right before she started producing things herself. And I think she really was looking at this, and there are a lot of Drew Barrymore in different places.
In your research, do you ever come across a point where Kevin or any of the creatives thought it was time to off Sydney?
No, and that's one of the things that Nev Campbell, Kevin Williamson, I think Wes Craven and Marianne Maddalena are all very adamant about. I don't want to speak specifically for all of them. I haven't had that conversation with anyone, but I know Nev Campbell has said that she will not play a death scene of Sydney. Kevin has, I believe, come out and said he will never kill her, that she's the heart of the franchise. So I don't think that we'll ever see Sydney. I'll be honest, I don't think we will ever see Gail either, unless Courtney Cox decides that she doesn't want to do it anymore. I think at this point, the two of them really are going to be in it until they don't want to. Right. I really can't see the two of them being killed off at any point unless it's their choice.
I've never been so happy about reading a book about the behind the scenes since the one about the making of Jaws, which I got the same. It gives me that same kind of feeling of like, I love movies. This is why I love movies, because it's, they just, the people behind it are just so passionate, and you really do that in It All Began with a Scream, and just something that has endured for 30 years and continues. I'm just so grateful for you for having put this together. Thank you so much for sitting with me and catching up, and also giving us a scoop on Scream 7 and what you're up to and your thoughts.
Thank you. I always love to talk about Scream.
And I'm sure we'll be screaming a lot more.
There's going to be many more.
You've been listening to Out Loud and Live with JC Alvarez. My thanks to Patrick Maroney for sharing his time and insight on Scream. The book, It All Began with a Scream, is available now wherever you purchase books or visit bearmanormedia.com. Scream 7 is currently in theaters. If you like what you've heard, tune in and also check out thefanzite.com for all your entertainment and pop culture news. Thanks for joining me, and always stay tuned.